Hi everyone, my name is Josh Weiss, and this is a new series that we're doing called Decoding This Conflict. So I'm going to share a conflict from one of my students in the past. Names have been changed to protect the innocent, and I'm going to give you some thoughts about ultimately how to try to deal with a situation like this, a very practical, tangible one. So the scenario is Maria, who is a high-performing project manager and led a critical product launch ahead of a schedule, um, ended up doing her annual review, and her boss, David, explicitly promised her a 10% salary increase, effective at the beginning of the next quarter. The promise was verbal but clear, and Maria shared the news with her partner and began planning around the higher income. Unfortunately, 2 months later, the company unexpectedly lost a major client, and a planned funding round fell through. And so senior leadership imposed an immediate spending freeze, including salary increases. So now David has to tell Maria that the raise can't happen, at least for now. Of course, from Maria's point of view, she feels that the promise was broken. She really questions the trust that she has in David and other elements of psychological safety. And she worries about financial planning and career growth. David's perspective was that genuinely he intended to deliver on the raise, but unfortunately, he has limited authority due to the financial controls that were put in above him. And he really wants to retain Maria because he understands how valuable she is. So, when you're confronted with a challenge like this, what could you potentially do? So, I'm going to give you a couple of thoughts here of ways that you could solve this thing. So, the first one is what would be called a time-bound triggered raise. So, instead of someday, specify some conditions. Commit to the original raise automatically activating once the revenue hits a defined threshold, funding round closes, and a fixed date arrives. So put everything in writing and make sure that that happens going forward. The second approach that one might take is a retroactive raise, or what's often called a make whole clause. So if the raise can't happen now, agree that when finances stabilize, the raise will be able to uh, be put into place, but it would be retroactive to the original promise date, or it would include maybe a one-time catch-up payment as part of all that. Another approach would be to sort of, if the cash is constrained but the structure is flexible, grant a new title or role expansion for Maria, something that might have some valuable value for her, and increase the visibility and leadership for Maria as part of all of this. And another potential way to try to look at this is to think about a longer term incentive, offer additional stock options, performance units, deferred bonus tied to recovery milestones, things along those lines. And then the very last one is sort of non-salary financial benefits. So other possible ideas that David could offer Maria would be extra paid time off, professional development budget, conference travel, student loan or childcare assistance, and a flexible or remote work arrangement. While none of these things are perfect, they do, from David's point of view, try to really reach out to Maria and help her to understand that she's valued and that she's really important and that they have every desire to make her whole and make good on the promise that they offered her at one point. So the key there is to make sure that she feels as if, even though this is not at all what she wanted, in the end, she's going to benefit greatly. So those are some thoughts. Hopefully, if you ever run into a kind of scenario like this, you'll be able to think of these different ways of approaching a situation and not just thinking in sort of win-lose zero-sum terms that either this isn't going to happen or it is.